Hi, friends. Good evening. Friends at Corabri, it's always a pleasure being connected with you every Sunday at 5 p.m. Lina Ashar is facing some technical errors and she would be joining us in the next few minutes. Till then, let me welcome our international guest today, Allison. So, today we have Allison Zmuda speaking to us all the way from Virginia Beach, USA. Allison has spent 19 years in the field of education. In fact, Allison has authored or rather co-authored 10 books, all to do with learning and learners. Allison, welcome to Moonshot Conversations. Lina has spoken to me about you, so much about you and about such a lot of excitement that we have for this session, for the work that you do for the children of the world. So welcome, Allison.
Thank you so much. And it's just such a privilege to spend some time with you and the parents and teachers that you're connecting with. So thanks so much for joining us. And again, lovely to engage in a conversation.
Fantastic. So we look forward for your questions, Corabri, our audience. We love the way you join us every Sunday and post questions and comments. Do share this content if you love it, and do make sure that you give comments. But most importantly, you can ask questions to Allison since we have her online here all the way from the US. It's a very weird time in the US, but she is here joining us and addressing all the audience in India and anybody and everybody watching this show across the world. So, Allison, you have authored and co-authored so many books. What I would like to ask you is, if parents and teachers were to you, only able to read one of these books which you co-authored and authored, which is the book that you would recommend, and a big why that you recommend that particular book?
Well, it's funny that you say that, AR, because every book feels like a baby. So it's difficult to pick just one. But if you're pressing me to do so, I would say Students at the Center, the book that I co-authored with Ben Akalik. I think first and foremost, this is really the time where I took the early work that I was doing on personalized learning and started to think about how to make that alive and vibrant in our schools, in our families, in our communities. And that's really when I had just such a beautiful synergy with Ben Akalik, starting in around 2015. And that I just fell in love with not only her, but also with Habits of Mind. And she's been such a vibrant source of light and leadership with Art Costa since then.
Fantastic, Allison. And what's the experience being till date?
So the experience right now is to start thinking about habits of mind, especially in the times that we're living in right now. I think you said, AR, that it's a weird time in the United States, and nothing could be further from the truth. So it's the challenges here, some of those challenges you may be seeing in India as well, of not just the pandemic, but the concern about the health of our children, the health of our communities. And I think the dialogue that we have with one another, especially in the United States. So between the political, the social, the economic divides, Habits of Mind really are such a powerful way to begin to grow the thinking and the understanding with one another.
Fantastic, Allison. We are happy that Lina is back with us. Before I could ask you the third question, she has joined us. There are these technical errors which keep happening. That's a part and parcel of technology.
Absolutely.
Before she jumps in, let me ask you my third question, Allison. You have co-authored work and you have been closely associated with Ben Akalik and Arthur Costa, the authors of all the work pertaining to habits of mind. What actually are these habits of mind, Allison?
Yes. So habits of mind are the thinking dispositions that we call upon when we are faced with a problem or a challenge or a situation where there's no obvious answer, where we don't know what to do. So that level of uncertainty, and again, we are facing so many uncertain challenges in the outside world, but uncertain challenges show up in the internal world in schools. And the opportunity to start thinking about how do we grow the capacity in our students, in our children, to actually not only manage that, but learn how to navigate through that so that they are not only growing through those challenges, but they're also coming out on the other side with a level of increased skills and competence and confidence in their capacity to engage in those similar things.
So, hello, Allison. I'm sorry.
Hi, Lina.
I had a bit of a glitch.
Hey, like I said, technology happens sometimes, but the good news is we can all hang out together live.
Isn't that beautiful? So I'd just love to tell our corroboree how this association happened. And it's beautiful because last Sunday I was doing research for empathy. And it's almost, I mean, not almost, it was exactly at that time. An ex-colleague of mine forwarded me your interview, the article you wrote with Art and Bina. And I said, this cannot be a coincidence. This has got to be an auspicious coincidence. It was just fascinating of how that happened, because it's similar to what happened when I brought on Lucia Capacchioni, author of The Power of Your Other Hand. It's just like the synchronicity. It was just incredible. And, you know, as a researcher and scientist, I'd love to know whether you actually believe in synchronicity.
I do, very much so. Yeah, and, you know, I think the intention is that you start to feel like the world is a lot smaller and more connected. And again, I think that there's such power in how one idea can spark another idea, whether it's in the room next door or around the world. So I'm just so thrilled how we began connecting together.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of people who have joined us, and I'd love to take one of Divya's questions. Sure. She's asking you, which are 3 or 4 habits of mind that are critical, which everyone needs to have, adults and children?
Yes. Well, one of the focus areas of this show is listening with understanding and empathy. And as a parent, as a teacher, as an education consultant, that's something that I always continue to work on. So that's definitely one of them. I'll take a pause on that because that's going to be a focus set of questions later on in the show. I think a second one is thinking flexibly. Sometimes we fall in love with our own ideas, and we can create, imagine, and innovate. But at the same time, we're not necessarily receptive to another perspective. So the interesting part of thinking flexibly is being able to learn how to step back for a bit and survey it with another set of eyes, or invite other perspectives before returning to the idea, the communication, the challenge, so that you can continue to move through that. So I think thinking flexibly is a huge one. And then right now, and again, based on how AR started the conversation, it's a weird time in the United States. So right now, I think personally finding humor is one of the 16 habits. And I've been trying to benefit from that by, I don't know that I'm actually funny, but finding humor in the outside world, inviting humor in, recognizing that, because we do need a bit of levity, especially in sometimes such dark times. So those are my 3, but they'll change 5 minutes from now. So.
I guess before he goes on, I guess it's also situational, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean, with all the habits of mind, in one situation, you may need to rely on, thinking flexibly, humor. In another situation, you may need to rely on resilience. So I guess it's situational as well.
Well, and I think that goes into the idea of how we have to be mindful as both parents and teachers, that habits of mind deliberately are designed using ing verbs. So communicating with clarity and precision, listening with understanding and empathy. And Lina, that's really tribute to the comment that you just made, that they are situational, they are contextual. So I may be very capable of listening with understanding and empathy with an individual or a group of individuals. But when somebody that I don't necessarily see eye to eye with, somebody that I don't necessarily find a rapport with, that is really starting to be a test on how sophisticated or skillful I am when listening with understanding and empathy, when I don't necessarily like what they have to say, how they're saying it, or potentially just a personality difference.
So, Allison, why are habits of mind something we should all be mindful of as we parent and teach our children?
Yeah, so I want to continue to clarify that the habits, the dispositions can be taught. So I think that's first and foremost, that while they are called soft skills in the United States, soft is actually, nothing could be further from the truth, right? They are the more sophisticated and complex set of thinking dispositions. But at the same time, they are not just valuable to family and communities, they're also valuable to employers. So when you're starting to look at the latest World Economic Forum 2022 report, they're focusing on the idea of leadership, creativity, and creative problem solving, being able to look at a problem and think flexibly around it. Those are the kinds of areas that are very much in line with the habits of mind. So we're starting to think about what it is that we expect students to do from a content point of view. I think are more of a means to an end in our contemporary view of learning, where content is still vitally important. You have to have areas to focus on, text to read, ideas to pay attention to, but you're doing so in service of growing your thinking capacity, because ultimately that really is the legacy of what we're doing as parents and as teachers.
Fabulous. Sorry, I missed the first three questions, so I'm just sort of quickly kind of catching up. AR, you can take your next one. Divya, again, who's very, very interactive today, has said, that's a great revelation. Habits of mind have to be ING words. Thanks, Allison. And this is a question that I had as well. For interviews, how would an interviewer necessarily check whether an interviewee has them? And she's asking beyond that, how do we grade or assess them? Is there a sequence or vertical progression to teaching habits of mind age-wise?
Yeah, so that's a fascinating question, and it's something that many schools are really trying to do a delicate balancing act. Oftentimes, habits of mind may show up on some kind of reporting system or a report card, but they often are done through effort rather than thinking. So they are an odd duck. They probably benefit more from commentary that is based, again, as Lina was suggesting a moment ago, around the situation. Because unfortunately, habits of mind are not mastering your literacy or math skills. They don't actually, you can't actually master them, right? That's why they're ING verbs. We're all in an act of becoming. So what we are doing is that we are giving clarity on how I have seen students grow in their capacity from a teacher's point of view, or parents can also reflect on that. But the most interesting thing is having students understand themselves better. So the reflection of the students paired with the reflection of the adult, whether it's a parent or a teacher, continues to give clarity on how they have done in this particular situation, and what are the real benefits after they're looking back on this situation that can carry on to something in the future.
Divya's question deeply saddens the fact that, in India, especially, schools get ranked basis the academic scores they churn out. And with us not really being able to assess them and getting a grade on them, a percentage score on them, they sort of get relegated in India to the back burner. That whatever kids pick up, they'll pick up along the way, but they're never really truly, I believe, focused on, other than a few schools that are very alternative in their approach. So yeah.
So it's interesting, Lina, that it's also true in the US. And I think that's one of the major challenges is when we can't put a mark on it, to what extent is it still valuable? And so then you can start thinking about what habits of mind are intended to do. They're intended to grow the thinking of the students. And so as we start to move into a conversation around personalized learning is grounded in the deep thinking, the deep engagement. And that really is so beneficial to employing the habits of mind so that students can determine which habits of mind would be most fruitful in this particular situation, and how are they learning to grow that habit of mind. And that's really where the parent or the teacher has a benefit of stepping in and coaching the thinking of the students, even when students are becoming increasingly self-directed.
So, Allison, we are super keen to work with you, Beena and Arthur, on a school that is built on the foundations of personalized and self-directed learning, something you have so much of knowledge about. So, can you please explain to our Corroboree what personalized learning is and why it is essential that we move away from more traditional curriculums to personalized learning format?
Fantastic. So, personalized learning in my world is a progressively learner-driven model where students are engaging in meaningful, authentic, and rigorous challenges. And these challenges are sometimes designed by the classroom teacher. Sometimes they are more co-created, where students are working with the teacher to clarify the direction, the focus, the ways they want to demonstrate their learning, the process of how they're moving through the learning experience. And sometimes they're student generated, where the teacher is a trusted coach in terms of networks, directions, areas of focus. But at the same time, regardless of where they are on that spectrum, the teachers are still very much coaching the thinking of the students. And that is absolutely pivotal, because when students get stuck, whether they get stuck on an assignment the teacher has designed for them or something that they are fascinated about, but they still get confused, unhappy, depressed, that really is when teachers and parents can very much assist. And the other interesting thing is that personalized learning still very much is connected to the desired outcomes. So personalized learning is not some abstract idea or an idea that students can do whatever they want and teachers are on the side just being cheerleaders. But it also starts to continue to clarify that there are authentic, meaningful, and rigorous challenges not within our own content, but also using the world as a stage. So having students begin to wrestle with developmentally appropriate problems and challenges and act in a way that is modeling the behavior and the thinking that you're hoping for with your children and with your students.
Allison, what I always find fascinating is, especially in India, if you go back historically to our gurukuls, they were actually centers of personalized learning. And it shifted when the British brought in a different format of education. And I think one of the things we keep forgetting as educators, as parents, well, not people like you, but a lot, that the things of personalized learning, the choice, the agency, the voice,
yes.
We keep, that autonomy is a human need that every single person has.
That's right.
And that only if we have that, do we have intrinsic motivation and so much of engagement and deep learning rather than shallow learning.
Yeah.
So,
Lina, I just want to piggyback on the point that you just made, is that I absolutely agree with you wholeheartedly on autonomy. I think the interesting piece is that sometimes autonomy can actually feel isolating. So autonomy is not, you're doing this on your own. Autonomy to me, whether you're working with a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old, autonomy to me means that I'm here for you. I'm here for you to be a soundboard. I'm here for you to actually coach your thinking on this particular problem or challenge. And I'm here for you because I value you as a human being. So I think the idea of autonomy sometimes gets a little bit mixed up with just leave me alone and let me do my piece. And by the way, sometimes that's what children need to, just to have a little time and space and not have people hover over them. But I do think that autonomy, again, can actually be a place of connectedness as well.
So, Allison, Lina and I explored empathy in our last Moonshot conversations.
Yes.
That was last Sunday. Same time, it was at the same time. We always have this show at the same time every Sunday. And very happy to announce and very proud to say that 16 lakh people have viewed the content. When I say 16 lakh people, that is equal to 1.6 million views. 1.6 million people viewed the content. That's the importance of that topic. So listening with understanding and empathy is one of the habits of mind. Allison, could you please expand on this specific habit and what does it mean? Why is it important? Some ways we can teach our children about this habit.
So listening with understanding and empathy is creating a better understanding of the emotions and behavior of your child or your student. One of the things, as I was reflecting on the interview last evening, it's really at the very core is knowing that I'm heard, knowing that you see me. And that to me is the territory from a parent and from a teacher's point of view of what the attunement is that you're creating with the child and with the student. It's an unwavering belief that I unconditionally love you as a parent, and that I unconditionally support you as an individual child and student in my classroom. So that belief to me also goes hand in hand with listening with understanding and empathy, especially when we're so closely connected with one another.
Absolutely. So we've got one question from Anand Shetty, who says, all our education is just a magnifier of our self-awareness. If your self-awareness is low, it doesn't matter which school you go to. What is your take on that, Allison?
Yeah, so I think the heart of personalized learning is grounded in 4 attributes. And the Bennett, Kallick, and I identify those 4 attributes in relation to the 16 habits of mind. And one of those attributes is self-discovery. And the intention is that as we continue to experience life through the challenges and problems we face, whether they're assigned to us by a parent or a teacher or something that we encounter, it is a way of better understanding ourselves, who we are, what we believe we're capable of. So I think the challenge is, how do we grow the capacity of understanding ourselves? And the habits of mind, like metacognition, is an incredibly important avenue to do so, knowing not only how I'm thinking about a problem, but also how I'm feeling about a problem. When I feel like I'm stuck or I'm struggling, what's happening in my mind? What are the thought bubbles above my head that give me insight into the way that I'm working and the way that potentially people can help me? So growing that capacity in students, in your children, continues to clarify the way we can actually coach them a little more effectively.
So, Allison, you recently authored an article with Benna Kallick and Art Costa titled "Empathy is Foundational During Our Current Uncertainty." Can you please explain why it is so?
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, AR, when we were thinking about what's happening in the United States and potentially what's happening around the world. We live in a VUCA world. VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, ambiguous. And and I think the intention is that we're trying to think about how to navigate the complexity of these challenges, and growing that through the habits of mind, specifically empathy, means that we're lending our mind to the problems and challenges by listening to one another, understanding not only their point of view, but also better than understanding the problem itself. Sometimes we are headlong rushing into a solution to a problem that we haven't quite understood yet. And so that to me is sort of the heart of why empathy is so significant.
Wow. So Divya's asking, what is the difference between personalized learning and differentiated instruction?
So personalized learning is actually taking the students themselves and having them be more of a part of the curriculum and the instructional experience, so that they are co-creating, they are thinking about designing the demonstrations, they're designing some of the questions that they want to pursue. They're also designing and taking more responsibility for self-direction, how they're navigating through projects. Differentiation is the opportunity where a teacher thinks back and identifies a handful of relevant topics or approaches, and the student is selecting from one of those ideas. So differentiation still really is more of a teacher-generated move. It definitely creates more agency in that students can choose from a set of menu items, whereas personalized learning is really starting to think about, from a student's point of view, what are they finding fascinating? What are they finding curious? And to what extent can we grow their level of curiosity? Because if we do so in that way, while it may be a little more complex in terms of managing that from a teacher point of view, it actually continues to enrich their own thinking, their own commitment, their own passion. I think the easy part is, from a parent point of view, I have two children right now. And when I had the second one, they were not playing by the same rules as the first one. And you started to understand very quickly, if you have more than one child, how interesting it is that while they may still have come from the same two people, they have different needs, talents, interests, passions. Their personalities are different. So you can still have common rules and agreements in a family, but at the same time, the way you continue to coach each child is wildly different.
So
Wow.
Siddharth's asking a very interesting question. And it's one that often when I'm doing teacher training workshops, I get asked this question, because India's a little different in complexity because of the sheer number of people we have. And Siddharth is asking, can student-led learning be actually a thing that can go to a big number of people? Wouldn't it just kind of require really small class sizes? And wouldn't that therefore entail high cost?
You know, it's interesting. I think, first of all, when you have personalized learning, you still have to have an agreed upon set of desired outcomes as a school. So those outcomes should be transparent and clear, because otherwise, when you're engaging in personalized learning, there's no aspiration that it's connected to. And that those demonstrated outcomes, again, can be very much informed by the curriculum, but also informed by the territory of something like habits of mind. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that students benefit from being coached. And when you have massive class sizes, it's very difficult to create the connected relationships that come from one-to-one or small groups. That does not mean that the classroom teachers are the only ones that can coach students. So as you're starting to think about the tremendous wealth of expertise in your community, for example, you can begin to start to see the value of internships and job shadowing and service projects. All can be enriched as part of a classroom learning experience or a school learning experience. So so that would be how I would sort of pivot on that question, that teachers are not necessarily the only ones to be able to coach the learners. but you also understand that when we are pressed for time, and again, I'm thinking about family situations, when we're pressed for time as parents, we become shorter and more efficient, which oftentimes is the exact opposite of what students need.
I'm also, Allison, very, very excited about bringing in technology to be able to personalize learning. I mean, I interviewed Sugata Mitra,
Yes.
and he was, and I mean, his work and his research is just so exciting, and it gives us so many possibilities that technology can help us, especially in a country like India with such mass number of kids to educate.
So, and again, I mean, I'm a huge fan of his work, and I think the idea, and especially when you listen to him speaking, I'm just remembering his TED Talk, the power of curiosity and the inherent action that students have. They fuel not only the thinking of the individual child, but it's such a positive contagion, so that they're actually influencing the thinking of one another by circling around and paying attention to a problem, a challenge, especially when they're doing it for the love of that curiosity, as opposed for a mark. But that's a different conversation.
So, Alison, in your article, you speak about compassion projects. So, what exactly is a compassion project? And Alison, what are some examples of compassion projects parents and teachers could do with their children?
Absolutely. So, I think one of the hearts of a compassion project, it starts with listening with understanding and empathy, right? And so when somebody, whether it's a family, a region, a nation, is faced with a difficult problem or challenge, what can I do to help? And oftentimes people, again, similar to something we were talking about a few minutes ago, act first without really understanding the depth of the problem or the challenge. I'm remembering back to Newtown, Connecticut, which was where I started my teaching career, and the devastating victims in Sandy Hook. And one child demonstrated such tremendous empathy by sending a teddy bear to the town, saying that this is a gift for them. And it actually it went viral and created a flood of tens of thousands of teddy bears, all sent to Sandy Hook. And the interesting piece is that one teddy bear meant something. Tens of thousands of teddy bears created a tremendous difficulty and an increased burden, not only on where to warehouse them, but on some level, that's not what they needed. They needed that level of understanding of their mourning, of their pain. So students and children writing cards, for example, is a beautiful expression of empathy. So that's one approach that you can take. But a second approach is when you're trying to help someone or a group, finding out from their perspective, what can I do to help? Let me listen to you for a little bit. And oftentimes that act of listening is probably one of the best gifts that you can give to another citizen. But there are tons of examples, thinking about clean drinking water, thinking about being able to provide sustenance to individuals, but doing so in a way that comes not out of obligation or a sense of charity, but truly creating or building upon that human-to-human connection. To me, that's what the heartbeat of a compassion project is.
Fabulous.
So, Alison, what would the world look like if empathy is something we all look to deliberately teach in our schools and in our homes?
Yeah. I mean, I continue to aspire to that world being in existence. It starts first and foremost with parents. It's the way we raise our children. And I am a flawed parent. There are so many things that I continue to work on, and my children are 16 and 19. But one of the things that I continue to pay attention to when it comes to empathy is treating empathetic listening primarily as a non-verbal exercise. So starting to separate out, especially when I'm angry or disappointed, not focusing on my own feelings, but really starting to tune into what my child is feeling. And so I think that's the first step. And I think the second step is to really mirror the kind of emotions that they are expressing by slowing things down, by pausing so that they can continue to say what it is that they need to say, to paraphrase. So you're describing the emotion that they just said out loud, so that they can continue to be more reflective and processing on how they're feeling and how they're continuing to resolve an unresolved situation or problem.
And I'd just like to tell our entire corroboree before we're getting sort of running out of time, that Allison's given us some great material and we've put it into the journal. So please, anyone who wants to know more about how to take empathy as a mindset and to actually teach it to your kids, whether you're a teacher or a parent, please download the journal.
Thank you so much, Allison. We have unfortunately run out of time, and the interesting conversation that we are enjoying with you along with the corroboree would have definitely gone on for a couple of more hours. But since we are short of time, we will continue this in some other format, in the form of content that we'll build with you, and the association that we would have in our work, whether it is the schools that we are developing or the online curriculum that we are going to be distributing to the whole world very shortly. So Allison will be in touch with you, and thanks a ton for being with us, and thanks a ton to the corroboree, our lovely audience, for being with us, for making us all these comments, for asking us questions. And we will see you again next Sunday at 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.